Hey guys, Kelade here. In the previous video, we talked about tier 21, and pretty much the only thing we didn't cover in regards to gear were the trinkets. So for this video, let's cover all the trinkets that you can get from the Antorus raid, and also the trinkets that you will most likely end up using during the raid itself. So here up on the screen, you guys are going to see the sims that I've done with these trinkets. So this is using the legendary helmet and the massacre ring. I know that in the previous sims that, sometimes the double execute rings could do better, but I think this is a safer legendary to sim with, just in regards for these sims. And this is also only using one single trinket. For example, if you guys see Convergence of Fates, that means I've only used Convergence of Fates and no other trinket, and that's the same for every other trinket. The only thing that I do want to point out is that the majority of these trinkets are used at 930 eye level, unless they have an eye level behind it, or unless if it's Casgaros Courage. So the amanthuls, you have two versions, the 1000 versus the 940 eye level. Unstable Arcano Crystal, I'm using 930, and I just threw in the 860, right? The very base one, just so you guys can kind of compare like how weak some of the new trinkets are that they can't even beat an 860 Arcano Crystal. And of course for Casgaros, I left it as 940 because since it drops from the last boss, that's actually the eye level that it drops from. So it is actually okay to compare that trinket at 940 while everything else is at 930. But let's just go down the list of all the different trinkets that are going to be here in the raid. So first you have at the top aman'thul's Vision. This is the quote-unquote legendary trinket, but it doesn't take a legendary slot. It's kind of weird how Blizzard is delving into this legendary space. So this is not unique equipped with Legion legendaries. So you can use this trinket and actually have two other legendaries equipped. So I don't really know why Blizzard gave it the legendary color, other than the fact that this trinket will most probably be best for everybody. It's kind of confusing why they did that. But with that being said, this trinket is uniquely equipped with Path of the Titans trinket. There are a few trinkets within the raid that have this Path of the Titans. As far as for a warrior is concerned, the only ones that you're going to be using is either aman'thul's Vision, and later on we'll talk about Casgaros Courage. So for those trinkets, you can only equip one of them. So right, if you're going to use aman'thul's Vision, you can't use the Casgaros Courage, and vice versa. But with that being said, this trinket is crazy good because it's just a better version of Arcano Crystal, right? The base eye level is higher, and that's pretty much what it does. This trinket gives you Arcano Crystal. It gives you, 4 secondary stats, and for the same reason why Arcano Crystal is strong, that's why this trinket you see is at the top of the sims. Not only that, but since this is a Path of the Titans trinket, what is currently simming is almost the minimum that it does, because if you get the Empowered by Pantheon effect, which will further proc, and it will increase your strength by a set number depending on the eye level of the trinket. So this trinket, the sims, you guys can see the DPS. When you're actually using it in the Antorus raid, this trinket could actually even do more DPS when you're actually able to get the proc from the Pantheon trinkets going off. Now the exact mechanics of how the Pantheon trinkets has not been set in stone, but currently on the PTR, the Pantheon procs can only happen in the Antorus raid. So you can't not proc the effect in Mythic Plus, other dungeons, previous raids, or even in the open world. So this trinket right now, the bonus damage is only in the Antorus raid, and currently you need at least 4 unique versions of the Path of Titans proc for it to work. But the aman'thul's Vision does count as a wildcard proc. So for example, you could have 4 users of aman'thuls and that will work. But if you only have 4 users of Casgaros Courage, for example, that actually will not proc the bonus effect. So you do need 4 unique effects, but every aman'thul's Vision count as a bonus effect. So this is probably going to be the most sought after item in the entire raid for pretty much every single DPS in your guild. So good luck with that if your group or your raid does not have a really robust loot system or people that are willing to share gear. Now of course, next on the list, some of you guys might be glad or you guys might not be glad to see this, but Convergence of Fates, even though it is nerfed on the PTR to instead of giving you 5 seconds less on Battlecry, it now gives you 4 seconds, it is still the second best trinket you can currently get. Now of course, I am simming the 930 version of it, and not everybody will of course get a 930 eye level Convergence of Fates, but this is one of those trinkets where eye level does not matter as much. So for most people, unless Blizzard changes this further, you're going to be using Convergence even when you finish Antorus actually. So we'll see if Blizzard decides to tune this trinket further, but for now this is still going to be one of the trinkets that you're always going to wear. And next, of course, we have aman'thul Vision's predecessor, which is the Unstable Arcano Crystal. I did sim the 930 version because I wanted to put it at equal footing to all the other trinkets that are on here. But of course, the best way of getting Arcano Crystals now is to the Relinquished Trinkets, and you can get a base eye level of 910 and pray that it Titan Forges or Warforges. But even at a 910 eye level, it'll still be really good. So I heavily recommend, if you guys don't have an Arcano Crystal yet, make sure that you guys are getting as much Veiled Argonite as you guys can and trade those in for the Relinquished Trinkets, because you definitely want an Unstable Arcano Crystal going into the next raid. Next on the list, we have Casgaros Curse. Now, this is the other Path of the Titans trinket that works for warriors. This trinket gives you a set amount of strength, and then also your damaging attacks have a chance to make a weapon glow hot with the Fire Casgaros Forge, causing your auto attacks to do a set amount of fire damage for the next 12 seconds. Now, unfortunately, the proc on this is RNG and it is proc based, so you can't always perfectly time it with your battle cry. So in that sense, it's almost a shittier version of the faulty countermeasure from Vault of the Wardens, though this trinket, when it does proc, it procs more damage, so that kind of makes up for that component. But just do know that this trinket is a bit RNG and that you can't control when the damage proc is going out. If it procs during battle cry, great, and if it doesn't, not so good. Now moving on to the next two trinkets, we are going back to the trinkets that we got in Tomb of Sargeras, which is Moonblaze and Cradle. Both of these sim pretty evenly, and it's kind of up to you and up to the fight which one you could use that could pull out ahead for you. It is unfortunate that both of these trinkets from Tomb of Sargeras are still better than the next four trinkets that we're going to talk about for a new raid, but let's keep going down the list. We have Seeping Scourgewing. This gives you a set amount of versatility, and then causes your melee attacks to have a chance to deal a set amount of shadow damage to the target, and if there are no other enemies within 8 yards, it deals an additional damage. Now, when you first look at this trinket, it seems like this should absolutely be the best single target trinket, because it gives you bonus damage for hitting one target that's not surrounded by anybody else. But unfortunately, it's just not as strong as the other trinkets because they just have much better stats. And once again, you can't control the proc rate on this trinket, so I can't guarantee that every time that I'm doing extra damage to this trinket that it's going to happen during battle cry, and that is a huge deal also. Next trinket on the list we have is Shadow Singed Fang. Your melee and range abilities have a chance to increase your strength or agility by a set amount for 12 seconds, and then your auto attacks also has a chance to increase your critical strike by a set amount for 12 seconds. Now, I think the moment I set critical strike, that probably turned most people off of the trinket, and that pretty much is the case. Not only that, this trinket currently doesn't have a way of preventing further procs while you currently have a proc, and additional procs while you currently have the buff up doesn't actually just add more time, it actually just refreshes to the full. So for example, if this trinket first procs at the beginning of the fight, 4 seconds later it'll proc again, instead of adding the previous 8 seconds with now the new 12 seconds, it actually just puts it back up to 12. So you're actually getting way less benefit from the trinket if it procs too often, and that's kind of shitty, because if you somehow use up all your procs, you know, in the beginning of the fight, and you waste 3 procs in a row within a span of 4 seconds, well, you essentially just wasted around 20 to 24 seconds of buff from this trinket. So maybe Blizzard will put something in place that will prevent that from happening, or if they can just always make the buff add up, that would be great. But in its current state, the overriding of the buff on the trinket by itself makes it really, really weak. Now, next on the list, we have forgefiend'ss Fabricator. It gives you a set amount of mastery, and your range and melee attacks have a chance to plant fire mines at the enemy's feet, and these detonate after 15 seconds, doing a set amount of damage to all targets within 12 yards, but you will get an on use for this trinket every 30 seconds, or let you purposefully detonate all the mines at once. So because of this and kind of how the trinket works, the sim DPS for this trinket could actually go up. I don't think the sims are using it perfectly right now, so the position of where this trinket lies could change drastically. The only gripe that I have about this trinket is that when you actually use the detonation, let's say there's 10 mines on the ground and you use the detonation, it actually doesn't do all 10 mines at the same time. It will actually blow up all 10 mines in sequence one by one. So let's say, for example, you get into battle cry and you want to use this trinket, you still have to make sure that you're using it early enough to pop all of the mines in battle cry, but you're using it late enough to get as many pops as you can during battle cry in case you spawn more orbs in the duration of battle cry. And also, since the detonation time is 30 seconds, I think this trinket also relies on Convergence of Fates not being nerfed, because without the nerf on Convergence of Fates, your battle cry essentially is on a 30 to 30 35-second cooldown now on the PTR, so that actually lines up really well with the trinket. But of course, that is assuming we still would be using convergence. The other problem with this trinket is kind of a similar situation with Moonblaze in that once the mines spawn, you can't really move them, so they're already there on the ground. So you want to make sure that the boss isn't going to be moving, or if the boss is going to move, make sure you pop all of your mines before it moves. Now, last on the list, we have Horselocks Legacy. Gives you a haste, which the haste is pretty good, but unfortunately the effect, your melee attacks have a chance to grant an echo of Horselocks. On reaching 15 applications, you will lash out with a devastating combination of attacks, critically striking enemies in a 15-yard cone in front of you for 1.4 million fire damage. Now, unfortunately, whenever you see a trinket say critically striking somebody, it's a bit unfortunate for our warriors because our battle cry already gives us 100% crit. So any trinket that auto crits is already a little bit devalued for warriors. And not only that, once again, you cannot really control the procs of this trinket. You could try to wait on your battle cry if you're at like 13 or 14 stacks, but unfortunately the stacks are not really consistent in how fast the stacks, and you can easily just go from 12 to 15 stacks in a matter of 2 seconds, or it could take you 20 seconds. It's really a little bit RNG for this trinket, but because of that, once again, since you cannot control when exactly the trinket procs, it can get a little bit hard to use and trying to sync it up with your battle cry. Now, of course, you guys might ask, since it auto crits, why does it matter if you use it during battle cry? Even though this trinket doesn't get buffed by battle cry, it is going to get buffed by unrivaled strength, which obviously only happens during battle cry. So ideally, you still want it to proc during battle cry, but I wouldn't hold your battle cry too much trying to get this to perfectly proc during your battle cry. And that kind of sums it up for this video. You guys can see the trinket list. It's a bit unfortunate that 4 out of 6 of the new trinkets in a raid does not even beat an 860 eye level Arcano Crystal, and pretty much only aman'thul's Vision can beat Convergence. So our trinket choices in the next raid can get a little limited, but as always, this is still a PTR, so things are still subject to change. So definitely make your voices heard that Blizzard's solution to kind of our trinket issue shouldn't just be to nerf Convergence, because that would just be a straight nerf to Fury Warriors. It should be a buff to these new trinkets that we should be getting, so that way when we're actually progressing in a new raid, get loot for a new raid, we actually see an increase in power, not backwards in power. But I hope this was helpful in letting you guys know the situation of Fury Warrior trinkets currently on the PTR. As always, feel free to subscribe to see more content. See ya.